Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I greet you according to your time zone. I'm so excited that you made it to this course on grant writing, how to write a winning proposal. My name is Jennifer Baji, and I'll be your lead facilitator. So, this slide was prepared, thankfully, by Dr. Joe from the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. Um, the purpose and objective of this training, this session seeks to enhance the capacity of participants in writing winning grant proposals. It is expected that after this session, participants will be able to explain the critical issues to consider when writing a proposal, to demonstrate understanding and use of the problem tree as an analytical tool, to use a generic format to guide proposal writing, demonstrate understanding of the use of the log frame. What is a proposal? What is a proposal? So put on the chat box, write it down. What is a proposal? What comes to your mind? You can use just one word. What comes to your mind when you think about proposal? For me, if you ask me, I'll say convincing. Just one word, convincing. To convince someone. A proposal is a persuasive offer to solve a problem, provide service, or sell products. So sometimes, most times, if you are for instance, if you are from the non-profit point of view, then it should be a problem you are trying to solve. And sometimes, even in providing services and you're selling of your products, you have to also show that your product is there to solve a problem. So there are different types of proposal, but focus will be on grant proposal, which is a persuasive appeal for support, usually money or material, or to enable you to solve a problem. So sometimes what a donor might be given to you might not be the physical cash directly. I remember one time in BBPRI, we wrote a proposal and we got a donor who said, you know what, we are interested in this. However, we want to directly do the spending. So we are going to pay for the hotel, we are going to pay for the meals, we are going to reimburse all your participants whom you mobilize, we are going to do all of that. So at the end of the day, we got that grant in form of material, not physical cash. So the key to writing a winning proposal, grant proposal, is persuasion, not description. Sometimes when we are writing proposal, we try to describe and describe. And sometimes descriptions are not enough. People want you to persuade them. Why should they want to give you certain amount? Why should they want to give you that level of support? Why? So while you will need to describe the proposed project, don't get me wrong, you might need to describe it, yes, but do it in a way that it will convince a donor to give you money or to support you in what you are doing. So what issues will you capture in your proposal to make it convincing or winnable? What issues? You can put on the chat box. What do you think what issues should be captured, to make your winning proposal convincing and winnable? Okay. So show that the proposal, show that you fully understand the needs and the problem to be addressed. So you can't come and solve a problem that you are not even aware of the key issues. I'm talking about the root causes. I'm talking about the effects, and we'll get to that in the fullness of time. Persuasion of the donor that the problem to be addressed is important and worth the investment. You need to do that. Then demonstrate that you know how to address the problem and offer a suitable plan. So mostly the way to get things done, for instance, Like for instance, in BBPRI, I'll give an example. We Some years ago we got a grant, and what we did was we identified a problem, but we didn't stop at just identifying the problem. We went to the different um, suggestions, the different solutions that were proffered, and what people had done. And then when we got to know what people had done in that area, then we identified some gaps. What were the gap between the solution that other people gave and why their solutions didn't work. So we were able to bring that down and put it in writing, and we got funding to carry out a project for 1 year. So in your addressing, you must demonstrate that you know the problem sufficient enough to provide the solutions. So that means you have to show that you are aware of certain solutions that has been proffered in time past. Demonstrate clearly how and why intervention strategies will succeed in addressing problem and generating the desired impact. Logic model. So what's your theory of change? What will change? It's very helpful. The proposal is technically and socio-culturally feasible. So you cannot just write a proposal that is not realistic when your donor is reading and they are wondering, like, like this is not realistic. You must be realistic. Okay, so evidence that you need evidence that the proposer is well qualified by virtue of experience and resources, including personnel to implement the project. So mostly, very few occasions where you have donors want to give seed funding to people who are just starting, who do not really have experience in it. So that's why it's very good to begin to start walking around the area and ensuring that your advocacies, your resources are being put together in a way that it will convince the donor. The budget asks should be reasonable and within the donor's means. For instance, a donor, you cannot tell a donor that okay, I want you to, a donor says that okay, the ceiling for a funding is 50 million, and then you are writing a proposal of 100 million, and they're like, it's not within our means, why are you asking us? So such things shall put off a donor. So the proposal is consistent. It needs to be consistent with the priorities and conditionalities of the donor. The conditionalities of the donor. Note that most donors want to make an impact or a difference. They want their money to yield positive results. They want the work they fund to be successful, so that they use success stories for fundraising from donor back donors. They are therefore result oriented, not activity oriented. They want results. They want results, and not just results, but activities. They want it to be activity oriented, not just results. So funders are eager for evidence that supports why your proposed solution will succeed. So they want evidence. They want to know how and why do you think your proposal will succeed. Show us why. And those are the areas that once you get to, it becomes very difficult to actually approve such grants, because you are not aligning. Something is not just is they are not in they are not coming together. What do we mean by results? A result is a describable or measurable change in the situation of the target group due to an intervention. Specifically, the change results often persuades in development cycles The change results are around change in knowledge, skills, and attitude. Change in knowledge, change in skills and attitude. Sometimes it's in change in behavior or practices. So your proposal might be talking about changing you know behavior practices, changing performances or abilities, and yeah. So it can also be changing accessibility level to some products and services, right? So it can also be changes in the level of fulfillment of some fundamental human rights. So emergence of new policies, laws, or administrative procedure, yeah, they can be part of your results. So for instance, if it's an advocacy grant you're looking at, you know that your change, your result is actually to see that a new policy has been formed, or a new law or an administrative procedure, or even a reviewed version of what has been there. There are different levels of results linked together to form the result chain as shown in this next slide. So you can see the result chain. You can see the impact, the outcome, the output. We start from the bottom. The input, what are you imputing? What are you bringing together? What are the resources you are bringing together? This can be financial, human resource, material resources required to perform activities. Then you go to the next step, which is activities. Task undertaken to transform into output, e.g., organized workshop on conflict prevention, organized public policy dialogue if it's an advocacy um, grant. And then the output are the immediate effect or short-term result on target groups or organizations after completing activities. The immediate effect, immediately what happened. So how many number of, for instance, how many number of women were trained, and it can be an output. Okay, um we set out to train 30 women in advocacy, then your output can be 30 women trained in advocacy, you understand? So outcome, is a medium term effect on target groups or organization due to the output. For instance, okay, you train this woman in advocacy, what happened? And so what has changed? So e.g., change in behavior, they now begin to advocate, they now begin to do activities, and all of that. So the performance level or policy, you see that as your outcome. So at the end of the day, the long-term goal, the impact is a long-term effect in the economy, policy, social or environmental condition of people, or realization of their rights. So it's in hierarchy like that. Yeah, so you need to have your results chain clear before any donor may want to, put in their funds. Concept of change. Every project policy often seeks to address an undesirable situation and that change that into a more desirable state. So what is, in advocacy, for instance, we have learned that you move from what is like what is on ground to what ought to be. So that concept of change always, you have to underpin, okay, what is the current situation, what is the policy problem. For instance, for identifying factors causing the problem is very key, the root causes. And then what changes do you want to see, what ought to be should now be your goal, your policy objective. For instance, if it's in policy you want a change, so what is the goal of that change? Policy intervention measures based on analysis of policy problem and small increment changes towards a bigger or financial change. So it's very, very important. Note that designing appropriate intervention to address a problem requires a good analysis of the problem and its context, so as to understand the factors that cause the undesirable condition, as well as intervention likely to influence these causal factors towards addressing the problem. So sincerely, if you do not get your problem analysis right, it will show in what you are writing and it will not make sense. And every donor that looks at it will be like, you're not ready, you're not sure yet. So I'll give you a little assignment. Just go into your notes now and identify the factors that cause the selected undesired situation. Like, for instance, where are you at and what changes do you want to see? For instance, is it you have a challenge? Just identify something and then identify the factors that cause that. For instance, let's say I have a problem called um, inaccessible facilities for persons with disabilities, for instance. So now I'm going to try to identify what are the factors why are facilities not accessible for persons with disabilities. So just in a few lines, just write what problem you are trying to, what the current situation is, and what do you think are the causes. So do that quickly in the next 2 minutes on the chat box. Just put that. So now, if you turn the negative causal factors into positive future desired changes, summarize your discussion in the table. Okay, summarize your discussion. Do it like something like this. Measure state, put on one side the state, the measure undesired state, just put it. For instance, just one for now, one is okay, but you can use it in your organization, like put it down like the list of undesired state of things that you want to change in your organization. You can just do that. And on the other side, you state the desired state. You understand? At the flip side, what do you want to see happen? Okay, so let me give you an example. I want the inaccessibility, like I said. On the flip side, I want River State, or I want Africa to be accessible for persons with disabilities. That's the desired state of the major issue that I'm trying to solve. I'm giving you an example. So the problem is inaccessibility for persons with disabilities. On the flip side, what I want to see is an Africa that is accessible for persons with disabilities. So you do that and write on the chat box. So the anchoring anchoring the logic chain, the theory of change, it may be desirable to articulate the theory of change underpinning your project. Very important, like I said. A theory of change is a preposition or hypothesis explaining why you think certain actions will produce some desired result in a given context. So you have to convince, why do you think, okay, those activities will bring that change? For instance, I say, okay, for instance, decision makers are not they lack the education, and I want to begin to educate them the need, how important to make Africa accessible and inclusive. So towards an inclusive Africa, what do I need to let stakeholders know? I need to produce evidence that shows that accessibility is very important and will improve Africa as a large. I'm just giving an example. So it articulates the project goals and the desired long-term change and the logical incremental change. It has to be logical. If this happens, what will happen? The effect of this happening. If Africa is accessible for persons with disabilities will begin to have their full potentials will be explored. They will also contribute to the GDP of the continent. So like that. So there is therefore a roadmap showing the final destination, which is your goal, where you are going to, and the routes, which are your strategies to trigger the desired incremental changes towards the goal. So it could be as simple as, if we conduct A, that's, let's say the activity is A activities to produce B outcomes in C settings, then we will produce D outcomes, which will ultimately contribute to E impact. So at the end of the day, we are looking at impact for the entire continent, for instance. So the theory of change, for a project to be established, dedicated, specialized, for instance, gender decks, gender decks, it has to do with the SDGs, of course, Sustainable Development Goals, as to increase accessibility of police services for women. It might read something like this: if we provide funding, training, and technical assistance to the police in 3 rural districts, that's an activity on its own, right? So then gender decks will be established in 12 police stations. That's an output. You understand? So, which will lead to more women reporting gender violence related cases to the police, which is an outcome, right? Which is an outcome. So, if this is an outcome, then leading to reduction in gender-based violence. That's our overall impact that we want to see happen. So it's as simple as that. So you have the diagram there. Theory of change could be dissipated as a map, like we said, the inputs, the activities, the outputs, the outcome, and the entire impact. I just put all I said into this diagram for easy uh, digestion. So yeah, so another pathway is like that, and you can do it for all your projects, all the proposals you are trying to do. Just, you start from your inputs. Yeah, what do you need, the equipment you need. Now imagine at the end of the day, so you now come up with a budget. For instance, your budget is the explanation of your proposal in figures. So your activities, um your activities must match your budget. You cannot, your activity is the flip side, the figures of your budget, for instance. So you cannot put something that is not on your activities and then budget for it. It doesn't make sense. I remember one of the times, but fortunately we still got funded, but we shot ourselves on the foot because one of the key activities we did not budget for it. So you see that there's a serious problem with that. So you need to make it align. What you need to do about proposal writing is that every donor has a ceiling of funding, number one. Two, they have the kind of clients they are looking at. So you need to, in your proposal writing, begin with your preliminary research about the donor. You understand? You cannot go and ask people to give you funding for livelihood outcomes and you know that they are strictly giving donations for health projects, you know, except if you want to link livelihood products, livelihood outcomes to health. Maybe you say something like, okay, if their livelihood outcome does not match, you know, if they are not living well, they are not eating well, they don't have nutrition well, it can lead to health conditions. So now you are speaking to what the donor is doing. But when you just come and say, okay, we just want to empower women and give them um, means of transportation to earn income from a vehicle, and then they are like looking at you, we are into health, we are not into empowering in that way. But then you can also, like I just did, link it to, if this doesn't happen, this happen, mental health issues starts coming, they begin to have high blood pressure because they can't feed well, they have bills to pay and all of that. So you need to be strategic in your proposal writing. Proposal writing begins with knowing about the donor. If you don't know, you are really going to miss it. Research questions on the donor. Ask who is the client or the donor. Who am I asking to give me money? What do they stand for? You need to also let that clear. What problem is the client attempting to solve? Okay, so a donor will likely give you funds if they feel that you are in the right place to solve that problem along with them. So um what are the mechanics of proposal submissions? You need to know all of that and all of that. So I'll stop here, and we'll see you at the next class, at the next session, and we'll discuss further on the problem tree analysis and how you can get results, you know, what research questions you can ask in when you are going into research properly. Thank you very much for your time. I'll see you in the next class.